Good morning. People are still piling in. It's great. Happy Easter. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today is being led by our minister, Eileen Casey Campbell. The service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We plan on continuing with hybrid worship services throughout the school year, throughout the church year. I do that like so often. I do that all the time. All right, so my whole life is based on school, it's true. So you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube as you prefer. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1000th, we are glad that you're here. I have a few announcements to share with you today. Please wear a mask. Masks are available for anyone who needs one in the back. Our service today will be intergenerational, so the children are going to stay with us, and we welcome their noises and fidgets. We'll be collecting the cards for joys and sorrows after our first hymn, so please fill them out or type them into the chat on Zoom if you have something you'd like to share. Everyone is invited to stay today and join us for potluck after the service. Whether or not you brought something, there's always enough to share. And I think that we have announcements that are good for the community. Karen.
So I wanted to remind everybody about the Nearly New sale coming up. It will be on May 13th. There will be drop-off dates the week prior, which we will let you know because I can't remember when they are. There will also be a bake sale, so even if you don't have things that you don't want in your house, bake something, and we will be selling that as well. I do have packets with pricing stickers and instructions if you would like to pick that up. I'll also leave some by the name tag board at the end of the day. And if you are remote and want one, just put your information in the chat and we can mail you a set. Thanks.
I have one announcement, which is that on April 30th, Karen and Melissa will be leading a May Day service where we do a semi-traditional maypole dance. And we lost our ribbons somewhere between last May and this April. And so if anyone has fabric scraps or ribbons, especially fabric ribbons lying around that they're looking to get rid of, we will put a basket at the back of the church between now and May 30th. We'd love it if you dropped off some ribbons.
Any other announcements? Okay, as we prepare to be fully together, I remind us all to silence our phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. Now is our chalice lighting. We have a special guest coming up to do our chalice lighting with us today, and is Poppy. With a little help. A little. Just a little. From Mom. There you go. Okay, join us in our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Nice job.
Faith and hope with love
today. So the other day at bedtime, it's always at bedtime, my 7-year-old asked me a really poignant question. It just really kind of like hit me and threw me back. He and I are both pretty big Lord of the Rings nerds. And this story has some Lord of the Rings spoilers, but I figure there's like a statute of limitations on spoilers for a book that was published almost 100 years ago. But you know, if you need to cover your ears, I understand. So at the end of this long epic tale that is about trying to destroy a ring that holds the sort of most evil power in this universe, there's a character, a sort of minor character named Gollum, who ends up being the one who destroys this ring of power inadvertently, because he's trying to get it for himself. And in a kind of gruesome way, ends up destroying himself as well. He falls into the pit of fire with the ring. And so the other night, Rory asked me, do you think in that moment while Gollum was falling, he felt good? And I said, do you mean like he felt happy because he finally had the thing he'd been trying to get all that time? He said, no, I'm pretty sure he felt happy because in the movie they show that he's smiling. But did he feel good? Like, did he realize that he had accidentally done one good thing in his life? And it blew my mind. I hadn't ever considered that this character might have gotten this one moment of feeling like he'd done a good thing. This character who was so corrupted and so destroyed by his quest for power that he might have had this last breath of redemption. And I think that that's why we come to church. It's especially maybe why we come to church on Easter. Because sometimes it feels like we are at the end of the story. Like the story is over, it's done, it's finished, it's been written. But actually there is room for one more breath of healing, of redemption, of knowing that we are good, even maybe accidentally. So let us join together in singing this morning our first hymn, number 61, Lo the Earth Awaits.
Lo
Friends, we are a community that holds one another in our joys and in our sorrows. In our celebrations and in our pain, we say to one another, we are with you. So I invite you, if you have joys or sorrows on your heart this morning, to pass them forward. You can write them on the slips of paper you find in your seats or type them into the chat on Zoom, and Rory and Ewan will come around with a basket to collect them from you now. Are there joys and sorrows to lift up today? For a story, but I need a little help finding our story this morning. So maybe those astute members of the congregation have already noticed there are some eggs about, and I need some help finding them. Oh, I see Elliot already has one. The first egg I'm looking for is a pink egg. Is anyone sitting near a pink egg? Thank you, Elliot. What do you want to look at what's inside of it and let me know? What do we have? These are the gang from Star Wars. Now it's not a Star Wars story, I'm sorry to tell you. Maybe someday we'll tell a Star Wars story, but not this morning. But this is a story about someone named Jesus. And like our friends from Star Wars, Jesus' teachings, Jesus' crowd, his friends, his movement that he gathered around him were subversive to a pretty evil empire. So in a way similar to Luke Skywalker, he was building a movement around him to tell all of the people who were harmed by this empire a better world is possible, and we can be part of making it. And as you might imagine, the empire wasn't too thrilled with this. So I need an orange egg now to see what happens next. Is anybody near an orange egg? You can get up and move around. Lynn, do you want to look inside? What do we have in the orange egg? Food. People around a table. Yes, yes, yes. So Jesus and his buddies, his friends, this movement, they had dinner together. They had a dinner to celebrate Passover. Not a Seder, because that wasn't a thing yet. We weren't in the rabbinic Judaism period yet. But they had some celebration of Passover that involved eating food together. And so he spent this night with his friends, eating, drinking wine, talking. We can only imagine having fellowship together. And on that night, he was captured by Roman soldiers, betrayed by one of his friends. And we need a yellow egg to know what happens next. What, do you want to see what's inside the yellow egg? Yeah, army people. They're centurions or Roman soldiers. They came and they captured Jesus while he was eating dinner with his friends and praying with his friends outside in the garden after dinner. So the powers of empire, these soldiers, this army, the government of this empire, the regional ruler, the court system, the soldiers, the money makers who paid his friend to betray him, and the everyday people stood by and watched, executed Jesus on a cross. And we need a green egg to know what happened next. Elliot has a green egg. What's inside? Candles. A hand lighting 2 candles. So the thing is, Jesus was executed on a Friday night. He died Friday afternoon, and the rules of the Sabbath for people who were Jewish, like Jesus and his friends were, say that you can't handle a dead body. You can't wash a body, prepare it for burial, put it in the earth during the Sabbath. So they had to leave him. And a friend of this movement named Simon, he said, I have a tomb. I've purchased it for my own death, but you can leave him there. His body will be safe there, and after the Sabbath ends, we can come and take care of his body and give him a proper burial. But they had to wait all through Friday night and Saturday, and because there was no electricity, also Saturday night, even though the Sabbath was over, because of course they wouldn't be able to see to clean his body and tend to it on Saturday night. So they had to wait until Sunday morning, and they left him in that tomb to wait. And now we need a blue egg. Is there part of the story in a blue egg? Yes. What's in the blue egg? It is, yeah, it is a rock. It's a tomb with a stone door, and that stone rolled aside. So there were 3 women that went on Sunday morning to tend to Jesus' body, to wash his body, to anoint it with oils, and get him ready to be buried. There were 2 Marys and a Salome. Not Mary, his mother. There are a lot of Marys in this story. But Mary, the mother of one of his friends, James, and Mary Magdalene, his best friend, the story tells us, and Salome. These 3 friends went to care for his body on Sunday morning, and when they came to the tomb, they were talking amongst themselves, the story says, saying, how will we roll the stone back? We're not sure we're strong enough. We'll have to find someone to help us. And as they approached, they saw the stone had already been rolled back. And they came up to the tomb and found it empty. They saw, as they were looking at the empty tomb, in the doorway behind them, a stranger dressed in white, the story says, who said, are you looking for Jesus of Nazareth? He is not here. He has gone ahead of you. And in the earliest collection of this story that we have, that is where it ends. There are other stories that add more to it, but this mystery of the empty tomb is where the story ends in the oldest versions we have of it. But we have one more egg, and it's purple. Does anyone have a purple head? Yes, Oren has a purple egg. What's inside? It feels like the story's over. No? Somebody writing something, exactly. So what happened is that Jesus' friends and their friends and their friends after them told this story and then started writing it down and then started writing different versions of it. And even today, we write new versions of this story because the struggle for liberation from empire continues and moves forward every time the story is retold or rewritten. And this is where we end our story this morning.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we would like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week, the group is hospitality, which is all of us. In the back of the church on the refrigerator is a calendar, and that's where we can sign up for hospitality. And every week we can bring a snack to share for coffee hour after service. In addition, 1/4 of our plate collection for the muddy season goes to Called to Care Canandaigua, an organization working towards the goal of welcoming refugees into our community. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket or by one of the options on your screen. We also have Venmo. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept our offering.
We have many joys and sorrows to lift up today. We share concern with Pat and Bill for their daughter-in-law who is in the hospital. And we are with Heather, whose grandmother has entered hospice this week. We share concern about some brotherly disagreement. And someone has asked for thoughts for a granddaughter who is struggling with OCD. We also celebrate with Lynn, who has had a wonderful Easter and birthday and family gathering. With Thomas, who is starting a new job. With someone looking forward to a trip to the movies in 2 days. We celebrate with Savannah, whose birthday is April 19th. We share our joy with Carol, whose husband, she and her husband are home safely after 3 months away. And we share enormous joy with Abby, Poppy, and Jeff, who are happy to be joining the church as official members today. For all these joys and sorrows, and for those left in the silence of our hearts, Laura will drop a stone in the water, and we say to one another, "We are with you." Will you say it with me?
We are with you.
And let us sing together hymn number 44. We sing of golden mornings. This weekend, we welcome new members to our congregation. We are so grateful to have them among us. I want to lift up that we are not only a place of transformation which welcomes them in, we are a place that is transformed by them. So with great joy, I ask our new members with their child, Poppy, to come forward as their names are read. Abby and Jeff. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. So, having earlier signed our membership book and made pledges of time and resources to the furtherance of our congregation's mission, our new members have already done their portion of the joining process. And now it's up to the rest of us to do our part. So I want to ask you for 3 commitments as a way of welcoming and connecting ourselves to these new members. So I ask, if you are a member or a friend of this congregation, will you please rise in body or in spirit? And here or on Zoom in your homes, I ask you to respond to these questions with a hearty "we do." Do you, as a community of hope, promise to stand and work beside these new members as we all seek to envision and enact a more just world? Do you, as a community of healing, promise to do your part in making this a place where these new members can bring their joys and their sorrows, their struggles and their celebrations? And finally, as a community of the heart, do you offer these new members the freedom to love and to listen to the sacred, to experience wonder and make meanings as their hearts and consciences lead them? If so, please respond, "We do." We do. Friends, welcome to our community. It is so good to join together on this journey. May our journey together be long and filled with grace. Amen. Please be seated. I want to invite you now into a time of centering and meditation, followed by some shared silence. I'll remind us, as always, that by silence we mean the absence of grown-ups talking to each other, so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life, to the birds chirping outside the windows, to the fidgets and wiggles and giggles of our children, to the breath of the neighbor seated beside us, to the beating of our own hearts. So find a way to get your body comfortable where you sit. Take a deep breath in. Maybe let it out with a sigh. Let your shoulders relax, and if you feel comfortable, let your eyes fall closed. There are little white bumps on the cut tip of the fig branch I'm trying to propagate. Were they there when I slipped it into its baptismal font of tap water and willow bark? I can't remember. Maybe it's nothing, but it feels like hope. I watched the January rains outside the kitchen window, and this poem tumbles around inside me without an ending. The warmest winter we remember, and every year warmer than the last. Despair is on the tip of my tongue. There is no return to Eden, but we have carried our fig leaves out to the edge of the abyss, and they threaten to take root here. Probably it's nothing, my own sorrow whispers, but it feels like hope. Back in the fall, I was sitting outside in the sunshine with a friend on her farm. This particular friend is, I think, the most positive person on the planet. I haven't met every human, but I'm pretty sure. She has this indefatigable optimism that isn't even annoying to be around, completely non-toxic positivity. Anyway, on this fall afternoon, we had been lamenting the disappearance of the butternut tree, like you do. It's a species of walnut native to this area, and we used to forage for them every fall when I was a child. They're delicious and buttery, really very aptly named. And until 15 or 20 years ago, they were everywhere you looked around the northeastern United States. A fungal blight has wiped out at least 80% of butternuts in the last couple of decades, and I've been on the hunt for just one local butternut for years with no luck. We took a moment for grief, and then my friend told me about visiting her Mennonite neighbors a few weeks earlier. They're farming business partners of hers and teachers who cultivate locally adapted fruit and nut trees. Eileen, she told me, they have a 20-year-old almond tree. Here in Western New York, they have adapted it to bear fruit, and it bears by the bushelful. I never thought that would be possible. Then she grinned and said, there are a lot of reasons for despair, and always 1,000 more reasons for hope. I think about the courage of the writers of our Easter story this morning, who were part of this little ragtag Jewish sect that was, even in their time, 50 to 80 years after Jesus' life, still small and seemingly insignificant in the wider world. They wrote the story of the death of their movement's founder, wrote it in the wake of a failed Jewish rebellion just after that death, and the destruction of the one and only center of Jewish worship in Jerusalem. And they wrote hope into it. It could have been a story of despair. State violence had killed their friend. By the time of their writing, had killed so many of their friends and family and comrades. The temple was destroyed, the rebellion put down. By rights, it should have been a story of lament and failure. They had so many reasons to despair. But instead, they wrote of resurrection, of a love too resilient to die, of a movement for liberation that, however hard power tries to kill it, will always be reborn. They had every reason to despair, and somehow they found 1,000 reasons to hope. I'm a fairly typical millennial in that I talk about the apocalypse a lot. I have that and very few other things in common with Jesus. He and his sect of followers were sure they were living in the end times. It was, in fact, the end of the life that they knew, the faith and culture that they knew. It was the end of something very big. Of course, we only know his story through the lens of writers looking back, who had already seen the symbol of their faith burned and their rebellion quashed by the empire. We don't usually think of the Easter story as apocalyptic literature, but it was meant to be. We don't think of it that way because we write apocalyptic stories that are dark and scary with zombies in them, but it is astonishingly hopeful. Sometimes apocalypses are. In most of our lifetimes here, we've passed climate tipping point after climate tipping point, speeding toward environmental collapse. We're in season 10 of a devastating worldwide pandemic. We're in our second Great Recession in as many decades. We are watching state-sanctioned genocide of trans people happening today across conservative states, a doubling down on white supremacy, an outright refusal to save our children's lives at the expense of our guns. We are watching the edifice of our own empire crumble around our feet. We are people living through what I think we can safely call apocalyptic times. We have been given every reason to despair. And I talk about the apocalypse a lot, but I do not come here on Sundays to tell stories of despair. We tell stories on Sunday morning to remind ourselves that when our hearts find a reason to despair, we always have 1,000 more reasons to hope. We come here with death at our heels to learn resurrection, to learn to see resurrection in the earth who wakes up after the long winter every year, who turns every death into new life, to see resurrection in promises broken and trust reborn again and again in our relationships, to see resurrection in communities of love that we build to last long after we are gone. I think about resurrection and I think of Marty as one of 1,000 reasons to hope. Sorry to call you out, Marty. But I know that in a week or two, our sanctuary will be filled with hundreds of daffodils, of the tens of thousands that Marty has planted in a field, so that once a year he can go all over town giving away his gold, as he says. One of 1,000 reasons to hope. I think of resurrection and I think of the children we watched at our egg hunt in the backyard yesterday morning. How many more older children than little ones came than I expected. And I thought, maybe this will be hard on the little ones. The older ones will find all the eggs for themselves. And afterwards, I checked in with little Poppy's parents, our littlest egg hunter. And I said, did she find any eggs? And her parents said she found one, and then the big kids helped her find the rest. 1,000 reasons to hope. And I pray for that to be the resurrection we find this Easter, the salvation we know we are promised. That even our deepest sorrow cannot obscure from us the fact that our very existence is a miracle. The small sorrows we know can never add up to that ocean of mystery that is unknown to us. And somewhere in that mystery lies hope after hope after hope. Opportunities for healing and wholeness and new life that we have not yet even considered the possibility of. That's the thing about hope. Sometimes sorrow looms so large that it convinces us it's the whole story, beginning, middle, and end. Tells us that the whole story of our life, of our world, is a tragedy, and that's that. But we don't need to see the whole story for hope to come alive. We just need to see that there's a little more left to tell. Another chapter, a few more pages, just one breath as we fall. Just enough room for some unexpected miracle. We don't have to see the whole forest to find a reason to hope, just the tiny leaves of a weed poking up through whatever ruin sorrow has left behind. All that hope needs for us to see the empty tomb of our own grief and decide that maybe love isn't that easy to kill. Maybe it's out there somewhere. May it be so, and amen.
Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, holding to the Son above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of faith. All thy works with joy surround thee, earth and heaven reflect thy rays. Stars and planets sing around thee, center of unbroken praise. Field and forest, vale and mountain, blossom
Friends, when we are afraid we are at the end of the story, let us always remember it is never too late for redemption, for resurrection, for one last breath of hope. Let's join together in singing our closing hymn number 344. Will you rise in body or in spirit and sing now together?
Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.